From 1878 to 1968, there were 71 lake captains that called Bayview, Wisconsin, on the shore of Lake Michigan, their home. While they lived here, they captained 195 different ships, from tugboats to schooners to steamships, in voyages that took them to every one of the Great Lakes. Join us now for another episode of Bayview, Town of Lake Captains, where we explore not only these captains, but also their ships, their homes, their families, and their lifetime of sailing adventures on the Great Lakes.
Well, hello again, everyone. I'm standing now in the location of the former home of Bayview Lake Captain Hans Hansen. Now, Hans Hansen, and I'm on Burrell Street. Obviously, now that house is gone, been replaced by a parking lot. But Hans Hansen is just down the street. His house is just down the street from Charles Moorbeck's house, also on Burrell Street. Now, what's unique about Captain Hansen and Captain Moorbeck and Charles Moorbeck's brother, Captain Rudolph Moorbeck, is in November 1900 they were all together sailing on Bayview's Christmas tree ship, the schooner Vermont. Never been reported before as a Christmas tree ship either. So this is a new discovery. The three of them are sailing together November 1900 out of Bayview up north in Big Bay, Denok, which is up by Green Bay. They got caught in a storm, the ship sank after being loaded with a whole bunch of Christmas trees bound for Bayview. The ship went down, all three went into the water, and all three survived. Very interesting story. Big part of Bayview's maritime history. Oh, one more thing too. Charles Moorbeck, Rudolph Moorbeck, and Hans Hansen were all immigrants, as the majority of Bayview Lake captains were. Remember, this video is being sponsored by the historic Bayview Lake Captains Society. We have a website. Check it out. There's lots there. It's also an interactive website. So if you're out walking, you got your phone with you, pull it up, and it'll show you by street where the captain's houses are. And if you want to go up and look at one, you can have at it. Very easy, all free. The website is free, the society is free, there are no dues. Also, the 650-page book that I wrote about Bayview Lake captains is being published volume by volume, 60 pages of footnotes in 9-point font total. all proceeds, 100%, go to put up a plaque with the captain's names on it, along with a sculpture, which I've talked about before, of our Bayview rescue dog. It saved a whole bunch of sailors during a collision. And also the historic marker designating this area as America's first and will be only historic Lake Captains District. Bayview can, and if I do okay here, will be the first in America to have such a historic district. So lots there. Go ahead and explore everything, and I'll see you in the next video. Now remember, hats off to our Bayview Lake Captains. Bye-bye.
Welcome to another installment of Bayview, Town of Lake Captains, where we discuss the lives of the 71 different lake captains that once lived in Bayview, Wisconsin, during the late 19th and early 20th centuries, in the age of sail and steam. This discussion will include their ships, their homes, their families, and their lifetime of sailing adventures on the Great Lakes. Here is the map of lake captains' homes in Bayview, to show you where this episode takes place. Its location focuses primarily on the large green arrow. Today we will be discussing the life of Captain Hans Hansen, who lived on Burrell Street in Bayview. He, like so many of the others you will learn about on this channel, had some amazing sailing adventures out on the Great Lakes. What's especially unique about Captain Hansen's background is that he had been captain of a Bayview Christmas tree ship and appears to have had 2 future Bayview lake captains aboard with him as crewmen when it sank in a storm with Christmas trees destined for Bayview, and they all survived. Hans Hansen was born in Norway in August 1856. One of 6 children, 5 boys and 1 girl, he immigrated to the USA with his parents and siblings in 1875 at age 19, settling in Hickston, Wisconsin, about 40 miles southeast of Eau Claire in northwest Wisconsin. One of his siblings was his younger brother Jonas, who, like Hans, would also become a Bayview Lake captain. Not much is known about Hans Hansen during his early years in Norway. However, the fact that just 4 years after immigrating to Milwaukee he bought a schooner makes it likely that Hans Hansen had been sailing for a few years in Norway before coming over. This would have allowed him to integrate into the Milwaukee maritime scene swiftly and smoothly. Hans Hansen moved from Hickston, Wisconsin, to Milwaukee sometime before 1879. He settled in Walker's Point, living in several different locations there, until 1896, when he moved to Bayview. While in Walker's Point, he bought the schooner George Barber in 1879, with Bayviewer Hans Olsen. They remained co-owners for the next 5 years, through 1894, likely taking turns as captain. 2 years after becoming co-owner of the George Barber, Hans Hansen bought a 1/3 ownership interest in another schooner, the Spy, in 1881. This was strictly an investment, since Hans Hansen likely continued alternating as captain and crew with Hans Olsen on the George Barber through 1894. Further evidence that the Spy was only an investment was that the other owner of the Spy, who Hans Hansen bought his 1/3 ownership with, James Anderson, not Hans Hansen, had been captain of the Spy when it was wrecked in October 1883. Hans Hansen continued his investment in other schooners as well, while likely remaining crewing or captaining the George Barber. This is found when, after the Spy, Hans bought the schooner S. Thal from fellow Bayview Lake captain and one of Bayview's lumber barons, Charles H. Ellis, in 1891–93. Of interest, later in 1898, after Hans Hansen had sold it, the S. Thal was documented as having been used, after this sale, to transport Christmas trees down from Door County to Chicago, making it one of the lesser-known Christmas tree ships of Wisconsin. In 1896, Hans Hansen moved to Bayview at 2323 South Burrell Street, working as a, quote, lake capt, unquote, his ship being the schooner S.E.M. Thompson. In 1898, he became owner and captain of the three-masted schooner Vermont. The Vermont is documented as having been used, at least in November 1900, to bring Christmas trees down to Milwaukee from woods up north, making him one of two Bayview lake captains that both captained and owned two different Christmas tree ships that were exclusive to Bayview, meaning they were owned, captained, and home-ported here. The other was William Lorry, who will be discussed in a future episode. Christmas trees were just one of the cargoes they carried in the off-season, but probably the most memorable. This last trip, in November 1900, to haul trees from northern Wisconsin back to Bayview, proved to be an exciting one. After loading the Christmas trees aboard, the Vermont got caught in a storm and sank north of Green Bay, in Big Bay de Noc. Hans also appears to have had two future Bayview lake captains aboard with him, Charles Morbeck as his mate, and Rudolph Morbeck as probable crewman, and all three ended up in the ice-cold water when the ship sank. They all survived, and the ship was soon raised from the shallow water and was sailed again in 1901, though Hans Hansen had left Bayview by then. Before he left, Hans sold the Vermont to his former crew members, brothers Rudolph and Charles Morbeck, who may have continued to use the Vermont to bring Christmas trees down to Bayview for the next Christmas season of 1901, but that is not known. The stories of both Morbeck brothers are told in other episodes. After Hans Hansen sold the Vermont to the Morbeck brothers, he left Bayview in 1901. After that, his whereabouts for the rest of his life are unknown. No information could be confirmed about his family either, due to at least 3 different Hans J. Hansens being found in city registers and national census records during research. A gravestone matching his complete name, including middle initial, as well as his exact birth year and month, is found in Withee, Wisconsin, about an hour west of Green Bay. If this is him, then he died on 3rd of April, 1930. He may have retired there, though that is not known, since he had settled in Hickston at age 19, and maybe still had relatives there. Thanks for watching. This photograph isn't about Bayview or its lake captains, but it's from the same era of Great Lakes maritime history. We thought we'd close with it for enjoyment, as it captures the spirit of the era. In addition, this channel and its matching website also plan to support various maritime history projects related to Bayview's lake captains. One of these is a plaque and marker with the captains' names and addresses on it, as part of the creation of the Bayview Lake Captains Historic District, which will be the first of its kind in America. If you would like to donate to support these projects, to include this and other markers honoring Bayview's lake captains, with 100% of all donations and contributions in all forms going to support them, please consider donating to us through the listings shown next. If, for some reason, we are unable to secure these markers, then all funds donated to this site will be given as a cash donation to the museum ship SS City of Milwaukee in Manistee, Michigan. That is the only surviving intact ship once captained by at least 2 and likely 3 different Bayview lake captains. I'm Simon Stanhope, narrator for these episodes. Join us again soon for the next chapter of Bayview, Town of Lake Captains.